folks, with the Eye of the Storm concluding the Return of Them story arc as we know it, I think it time to spend the next 2 days or so discussing the Return of Them as a whole, from the release of the Turn of Tides 2 years ago, if you can believe it, to a slew of seafaring content that still fell under the Ark and Clay's mind. I think that we can all agree that it has been one heck of a roller coaster ride. Especially when we factor in the beautiful end of the update cycle with both Forgotten Knowledge and Reap What You Sow here. But they weren't the end, were they? The Eye of the Storm is the end of the beginning, and I believe it deserves one last look before we say goodbye to this 2-year journey, everyone. But hold up, Beard. How is this video going to be any different from this quote-unquote final thoughts video from before? Well, first of all, that video is 3 weeks old at this point, and I have zero understanding of how time works now because of that realization, so that's a thing. But secondly, we talked all the content when it was still in its beta form, without any other context or experience. Like how we missed out on some awesome teaser trailers with Charlie front and center, ready to rage war with what she knew was coming, which obviously started the lore ball rolling again. We also didn't jump to any conclusions as to what Wagstaff was really up to, because we even said in that video that we would wait for the update cinematic to drop to hopefully learn more. Only to be left with some more questions than answers actually, but what can you do? And lastly, I think we just anticipated more. And you know what? That's not a bad thing to say, given how this was a finale at the end of the day. A finale 2 years in the making, mind you. And a finale that didn't actually feel celebrated, even by Clay themselves. As yes, I think the lack of lunar-related skins, or even just the lack of additional lunar items being added, speaks volumes about how we're all kind of feeling about the Eye of the Storm here, and perhaps even the Return of Them as a whole. That being, that's it, question mark? Now that last part is sort of like the Eye of the Storm, and it can be broken up into 2 separate parts, everyone. The totally that's it question mark at the end is something that I think we'll dive deeper into tomorrow or maybe the day after when I commit a cardinal sin and make a tier list. Yes, you heard that right. A tier list of every single Return of Them update from, like I said, Turn of Tides to now. So, join us for that. With that first part, the whole we anticipated more thing being a reason and distinction between the first Final Thoughts video and this one, being contextualized very simply like this, everyone. We got introduced to the Lunar Island and all that came with it back in May 2019. So, almost 2 years, mind you. Then we had 4 seafaring content updates back to back to back to back, right? And then we got Forgotten Knowledge, which was absolutely phenomenal, but again, we'll talk more about all the other Return of Them updates tomorrow, or whenever I do that tier list thing. At the end of 2020, too, so let's remind us of that. And then, of course, waited a few more months, and at the beginning of 2021 here, we got Eye of the Storm. 3 updates related to lunar content and essentially the Return of Them, out of 8 over 2 years. I think you can kind of understand people's confusion, displeasure even, with how it ended just by understanding that. And so with that, we sit down, everyone, to really evaluate the Eye of the Storm as a whole by itself one last time. And I know we have talked about the update ad nauseum at this point. I totally get it. So this is going to be quick. We're going to be breaking it down into its 2 parts, some final thoughts on those 2 parts, and one final conclusion at the end of whether or not the Eye of the Storm was the way to go out. And let's start with the passing grade side of this update because it's very quick because of how much I like it. And that would be the coming together of the 3 celestial altars and what that does to the world as a whole, which is something we really have never seen, which is fantastic. And of course, the celestial champion. The altars coming together and all that nonsense. It's just great progression from the previous lunar content update, Forgotten Knowledge. So that lineage already gives it good merit. You know what I mean? Because we didn't have that merit for over a year before. Kind of the point I made before. How it changes the world is something we have never seen before with the moonstorms. Now, the moonstorms are half and half for me. We'll get to the other half in a second. But I like how when they spawn in and the celestial altars are up, how the world changes with a full moon every night. It makes sense. We awoke the moon, which is not exactly the moon, but maybe we'll talk about that the other day. But it just makes total sense that every night the moon is awake. It's staring us down. Every night's a full moon. Bonus reward from the entire thing, which is probably still one of the better things about it. However, to part number 3 here, another very good part that has become better, Celestial Champion. The Celestial Champion boss fight. At first, very easy. Very easy, and people were disappointed in it. Clay, though, has gone above and beyond, at least with Phase 3, to actually make it worthy. I really do believe that. Phase 3 is not easy. And, well, I just like the way it looks. I like the way it sounds. I get that the moon is sending the champion to defeat these people who are somehow pawns in all this. It just makes sense. That side of it all, fantastic. But hold up, Beard. That means you're saying the Wagstaff side of the content isn't fantastic. It's flippin' Wagstaff. He is the biggest name in the lore that we could possibly think of, and he's finally in the game. How can you say that? Well, it's because that's the reason why his half of the content doesn't really work. I don't think anybody can disagree with this, honestly, that he was just plopped in and plopped out as quickly as he could have. Right? No explanation whatsoever, which, yes, helps the mystery of it all, but he is Wagstaff. We should have maybe been getting teases beforehand. When he was in the game, he should have had a little more interaction. Our character shouldn't have been so upfront in helping him immediately without any question whatsoever, which we talked about in that Final Thoughts video, by the way. And it's just, why? And oddly, we do kind of know why. He was there for the return of them. He is the ultimate addition of 2 years of content. Wagstaff is finally confirmed to be a part of this story. He was extracting lunar essence. He was there for the awakening of the moon, staring up at it, writing something. We know why he's there, essentially. Again, I think people are just thinking like, okay, now what? Now, one last thing I would like to bring up one last time before we answer the final question here are moonstorms. I think we'd all agree that, yeah, when they form, they change up the world depending on where they spawn. But do they? No, they don't. They only impact us. They impact really nothing around them at all. Every mob just goes about its business when it's in the middle of this violent lunar storm that has come out of nowhere, spawned from the power of the frickin' moon awakening. How is it not packing more oomph, if you know what I mean? How are butterflies still butterflies and not moon moths? How are carrots not carrots? How are any of the trees not becoming some sort of loon tree variants? How are the saplings not the lunar saplings? You know what I mean? It just doesn't have the gameplay aspect to it that would link it to its lore side of things. And now I get it. It's a video game, so sometimes you gotta kind of have a cognitive dissonance sort of deal with that. But for a finale type update, for the biggest, probably biggest story arc you have ever done, for a huge component of it to just lack any weight, just feels weird. And I think people are getting that. They just haven't said it out loud. So with that, what is the weight of this content? And unfortunately, I can't answer that, you can't answer that, and I'm not even sure Clay can answer that. Because one of the things I kind of wanted to talk about today, but I didn't really get to, was I also felt like Clay wasn't really sure what they wanted to do with the last half of Return of Them here, they nailed it with Forgotten Knowledge. But why did it take so long to reach that point? Also, months later, we then get Return of Them here, and as I predicted, and I probably shouldn't have predicted it, I'm sorry about that, I was right again, they left all the lore stuff in the cinematics. One was a teaser, and one was a update cinematic, but again, it left us with more questions and answers. You know, I just don't know if Clay knew how to connect the dots between the gameplay and the lore and to bring it all together with a triumphant finale to the Return of Them. Because at the end of the day, it can be summarized like this. They were here the whole time. It's potentially many, many months before we even have an idea of what Charlie's up to. Many, many months until we see what Waxef is up to. Many, many months until we see what the moon is and what it's up to, what Alter's up to, what Matthias is up to, if Charlie is actually the reincarnation or fusion between the ancient queen and Charlie herself from before. That's a whole thing that we haven't even discussed yet. It's a whole thing. So I guess then it all comes back to what we started with. People anticipated more. And you know what? That's not bad. I know people are already going to be typing, it's a free update. Clay's given us free updates before all that, everything in between and everything beyond and everything less, right? That doesn't mean you can't just talk about it, right? I mean, if you take all the context, which I hope I've given to you well enough here today, and then you just look at the Eye of the Storm by itself as a finale update labeled by Clay as the conclusion of a 2-year Return of Them story arc, how can you not be a little disappointed? Me personally, I look towards the future because I'm the bloody idiot who got lucky in guessing that any of this was even going to be true with the moon and all its content, right? I'm just a little concerned about how long it's going to take to get us there again. Took a while, and then for it to peter out a little at the end here, leaves even me a little shaky. Just gonna come out and say that. I enjoyed the content. As a whole, for the most part, I still love Lunar content. Forgotten Knowledge is just too good. Forgotten Knowledge is too good, but again, we'll talk about all of Return of Them another day as we go through all updates as a tier list thing. Again, that will be either tomorrow or the coming days. But folks, let me know your thoughts down below. Again, I just wanted to sit down, talk about it one last time, and just maybe again contextualize some of the feelings that we just have right now and why waiting much longer is not going to help them. I know the game development is hard. Clay has a plan. This is not the end of the Lunar content. This is just end of one arc. Just, man, could have been handled a little better perhaps. But folks, I think that will do it for now. I hope you didn't really necessarily take this as a negative thing, because it wasn't. It was mostly just a casual conversation about a lot of different things. The content itself, how I felt about it, how others felt about it, and why maybe the weight of it just wasn't quite enough, and how that actually impacted the feelings. You know what I mean? That's pretty much the summary of the video right there. But thanks for watching, folks. I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.